Hey, my name is Limbo. Welcome to my review. This is why I like Escape from Tarkov.
It's a little lag.
Is that-
You got him. Would you post that?
Yeah, I just killed. I see. He's dead. One. Hey man, what are you trying to do? What's your quest?
How you doing?
Yeah, straight out here.
I see him. He's dead. Oh, it's a cheater.
There's cheater. Coming towards me, he's speed running.
Yeah,
running
he's
over
speed
here.
I
running.
thought that was one of our teammates.
Escape from Tarkov is not really one of your ordinary run-of-the-mill games. It's nothing like Apex, the Finals, or even COD for that matter. It's something special that not a lot of other game companies have been able to nail in the extraction shooter genre. Battlestate Games has more or less carved out their own little spot in the gaming industry and popularized it. Got that mystique to it when you first boot it up and it immerses you so incredibly fast. It draws you in and it doesn't let go. Well, till your first death and you start to realize the kind of game it really is. This is kind of a disclaimer to everyone before you continue to watch. If you get really upset at games very easily, or you just don't really want to invest your time into getting good at a game, Escape from Tarkov might not be what you're looking for. It's a grind, it's painful, and it is most certainly spirit-breaking some days. I first started playing Escape from Tarkov in 2018 and managed to rack up a whopping 8,500 hours in the game. If you're here for a quick review and curious about whether it's worth playing in 2024, the short answer is yes. But if you're here for a more deeper review and you're curious about some of the opinions that I've got on the game, I'll be structuring it and splitting it up into segments. Time codes will be available in the description down below. What is Escape from Tarkov? For all those veterans who have been around for a while, a lot of us just like to refer to it as Head-Eye Simulator, but for those who are completely fresh and wanting to get into the game, it's a hardcore realistic shooter with RPG and MMO features. When my friends ask me how to describe the game, I'm still kind of at a loss for words to say. A lot of people just describe it as the Dark Souls of FPS, which is fair, with how hard the game actually is, but it's not quite on the money, it's a general statement. My favorite part of Escape from Tarkov isn't the gunplay or the community, it's actually the lore and how deep it goes. It feels like a living, breathing world and it's very natural. Especially recently with the update to the ambient sounds and the season system, it feels more lively than ever. If you ever played an Elder Scrolls game, it's kind of like that. It really drives home the whole MMO and RPG feel to it. You're basically a PMC dropped into a fictional region in Russia called Tarkov, and it's your job as a player to escape. Hence the name, Escape from Tarkov. There's actually a lot more to go over with it, but that's basically a summary of it, and I'll leave it to the lore junkies that actually want to go through their content on YouTube and dive into it. The main draw of the game is the raid system, which is kind of weird, but right before you select your map and what you want to do, you've got two options. You've got your PMC or you've got your scav. Your PMC is your main character, and you can equip whatever you'd like onto him from your stash. This is your primary loadout and what you'll be bringing to the next raid. Your scav on the other hand is a completely different faction compared to your PMC, and scavs are primarily the AI seen on the maps that are trying to send you back to the lobby. When you load into a map as a scav, you get a random scav loadout, and these can differ from completely busted loadouts to absolute garbage. It really depends on your scav karma. With that being said, the scav karma system is kind of weird, and I don't really want to touch on that subject just yet. But the short version of it is, if you kill an AI scav as a scav, you lose karma, and if you kill a PMC as a scav, you gain karma. Now, you're in the loading screen and the timer is started. Your raid is about to begin. What do? Simple. You loot, kill, and try to make your way to the other side of the map to extract. If you manage to die in a raid, you pretty much lose everything that isn't inside your secure container, and your experience is actually halved. But if you survive, you get all the loot that's on your PMC, and you can transfer it into your stash to use for later. Also, you get more experience. You also get these things called run-throughs, but they're not really that big of a deal. If you have a found and raid item for a task, you'll lose that status and you won't be able to turn them in. It also counts for survives on maps as well, but you don't really fail the task in most cases. It just kind of doesn't go through and you'll have to run the raid again. So run-throughs are not really a huge deal if you're just running a map in general, but a huge issue if you're trying to get things done. The stash system is actually one of the better ones I've seen in the game. It has a lot of problems and flaws, but for the most part it works pretty well. One of the features that I really enjoy is actually called the auto sort button, which if you're a messy kind of gamer like me, you're gonna want to be using this feature. It all sorts everything into your inventory and it makes everything pretty much easier to navigate. I don't really want to spend too much time on this subject because realistically it's not really that big of a deal, and we've all seen stashes in games, especially if you played franchises like Diablo or any kind of game like that. Also, I kind of just want to touch on the subject of insurance before we slide into the next section. Insurance can be kind of pricey when you get into the higher levels, but it's well worth it. Insure your gear and anything that's left over by the end of the raid, you'll get back. The only things that you can't really insure as of right now are medical items, bullets, and grenades that I know of. If I missed anything, let me know down in the comments below. So, how much is Escape from Tarkov? And what do I get exactly? Well, to begin with, you're not really getting a full game just yet. It's still in beta, which means a lot of things are subject to change. This normally means just balance patches, bug fixes, new content, and honestly whatever they want to throw into the new release of the game, which by the way is coming up pretty soon. For all these packages and things like that, I'm just going to be hitting on most of the large items that are in the packages and then showing the rest of everything on the screen. So with these packages, you have the standard edition for $50. You also get an alpha secure container. The left behind edition is pretty much just a stash increase and you get that for $82. And finally, we have the prepare for escape edition, which is $110 and greatly increases your stash size. And you also get a beta container. At this point, if you're willing to buy a game that's still in beta for $110, you're absolutely interested and there isn't anything wrong with it at all. When I first started playing, I bought the standard edition, then upgraded to the Edge of Darkness edition, which is discontinued by now, but it was $140 and was a lot back then, and honestly it still is. The Edge of Darkness edition came with a guarantee of all access to all the future DLCs, a gamma container, and max stash space. Also, a cool little crown next to your name, pretty much telling others that you're more or less a whale. I never really took the time to look at all the other editions of the game compared to EOD, and now in retrospect it feels a little pay to win. Most of the things that you get with the pricier packages aren't really super relevant when it comes to mid and late game, but they become very apparent when the beginning of wipe happens. That being said though, just because you buy a higher tier edition of the game won't make you a better player. That comes with time and skill and something that you can't gain unless you want to learn the game and its mechanics. Now it's time to touch on the DLCs and what they bring to the table. Let's start with the stash space upgrades. You can pay $3 for 2 additional stash lines, which means you're paying a total of $42 for an extra 28 lines of permanent stash space. This also means it's permanent, so even if it wipes, you still get it. It's not really super egregious, and you can definitely play the game without needing to purchase it, but it's still there for people that still want it. The next DLC on the docket is the co-op upgrade, and it costs an additional $10 and allows you to access the practice co-op mode. If I'm being straight, I haven't really made up my mind about this one. It feels like they're kind of gatekeeping, and I feel like it should just be offered in the base game. I don't think anyone wants to pay for an offline mode. It especially stings if you're holding an offline event for your community, and some people just can't participate because they haven't paid an additional $10 for it. The final add-on that I want to talk about is the apparel unlock. This one, honestly, it stings a little bit, and I think a lot of older players will feel the same way once I kind of explain it a little bit. So based off the amount you want to actually pay, you get a choice of 3 outfits starting at $5, $7, and finally $12. The reason why it feels like such a slap in the face is because we've already got these outfits in the game and they're mostly high-level expensive things. They're just repackaging something you can earn in game and selling it for money. I would be all for them adding brand new clothing into the game for a fee, but this feels kind of lazy. They couldn't even do the bare minimum by changing the colors on the clothing. It's just kind of disgusting, but that's just my personal opinion on it. I'm not really going to get into Tarkov Arena because it's a standalone thing and I kind of want to dive deep into the game with another review. So I'll save everything involved with that game mode for some future molding. So where do we begin with the weapon system in Escape from Tarkov? There's actually so much to talk about, but I'm going to condense most of it down and skim through a lot of it just because I want to keep the video a little bit shorter. The weapons in Escape from Tarkov are, in my humble opinion, the real reason why most players stay with the game and tend to come back every single patch when wipe happens. There really isn't a lot of games out there that you can even compare the weapon system to. Honestly, it's a very short list. There are currently over 120 different weapons in the game that mostly have fully customizable parts, and there's only like a handful of weapons that I can really think of that can't really be modded out. There's a lot of different parts too. They're pretty unique. There's over 20 different scopes and over 30 different foregrips in the game. I'm not sure if you see where I'm headed with this, but there's a ton to customize. You want to know what the craziest part is? A lot of these attachments are able to be put on and taken off during raid. You can completely strip weapons and take them with you when you go to extract out of the map. Weapon building in this game is also pretty good. Once you unlock the workbench in the hideout, you're able to modify your weapon on the fly from your stash. Takes a lot of the heavy legwork out when you're just trying to build a gun. Alright, I'm done gushing about the guns. It's time to talk about the armor system and how it works. Recently, Escape from Tarkov did an armor update rework. This shifted the armor from your run-of-the-mill regular armors to something completely different. They call it the plate system, something like what you would see in Call of Duty Warzone. This gave armor a lot more customization and it added a couple more hitboxes, but mainly the armpit. With the armor system, you've got certain armors that'll cover more and you'll get some that'll cover less. They also come with plates already inside of them, so you can interchange them with whatever ones you want that'll actually fit inside the empty slots. Confused? I was too. Let me just show you an example of what I mean. The Zuck Press body armor starts with level 3 plates, but you can take them out and replace them with pretty much whatever plates you want. There are a couple different levels of armor in this game, 3 being the lowest and 6 being the highest. Most of the players normally run around 4 to 5, and sometimes you'll come across people running level 6, but it won't be very often, and it's usually late wipe. You've also got other equipment that you can bring with you, like grenades, backpacks, headsets, and helmets. They've all got their part to play in the game, but one I really want to touch on the most is probably headsets. These are a pretty essential item to being successful in the game. Not very often you'll find someone not running a headset. They're all very different, and it'll take time to find the one that works for you. Personally, I love M32s. It's kind of hard to explain, but they work for me. Ammo and mags are wildly different in Escape from Tarkov. Instead of just loading to a game with a pre-made weapon and ammo, you need to load in the actual weapon yourself every raid. Ammo and mags are completely separate. For every mag, there's a certain caliber that you can load into it, and this can kind of be complicated to actually figure out. One of the biggest things that helped me out with ammo was the actual ammo chart that the community provided. Got values for penetration, flesh damage, and just about everything you can think of. I'll link it in the description if anyone's interested. I don't want to go too crazy with the ammo section because realistically it's one of the most deep systems in Escape from Tarkov, and I don't really want the video to be over an hour long, so we'll skip most of it. The last thing I really wanted to touch on and talk about in this section is the healing and the health system in the game. Healing in this game is actually really unique, and no other game really does it like Tarkov does. You've got light bleeds, heavy bleeds, blacked limbs, dehydration, hunger, concussions, and fractures. All these health-related problems have a certain item that will actually help that certain issue. So let me explain. You've got a heavy bleed and you can't use a bandage, so you've actually got to use a tourniquet. If you've got a light bleed, you need to use a bandage, you can't use a tourniquet. See what I'm saying? It's very deep, and it'll take a while to get used to it. There's also a stim and painkiller system that people tend to abuse a lot in this game, but I won't even touch on that because it's a whole different thing. This section would be really long if I took the time to actually explain how the hideout impacts the game in the flea market. So instead I'm just going to gloss over it and give some context and main points to it. The hideout is actually a pretty big part of Tarkov, and it plays a really big role in it. But mostly what you'll actually be doing is either crafting items, using the shooting range, or collecting your bitcoins. Also a little bit of gambling. A lot of people ask, when do I start investing in my hideout? And most of the time I answer not until the first month of wipe is done. This is mostly because it's very expensive to start upgrading your hideout, and you'll need that money mostly for tasking. It's also really good to sell hideout items early wipe on the flea. You can make a boatload of money, especially if you're a newer player. The two most important things in the hideout for me are definitely the workbench so I can bot out my weapons, and the shooting range to test them out. Like I said earlier, there's a lot more to go over, but I want to keep it kind of short. The skill system is more or less the same thing, a very deep system that I don't really have time to talk about in this video, so I'll explain how it works and what a couple of my favorite skills are. As you level up your skills, your PMC gets better and stronger. The levels range from level 1 to level 52, where it'll change into an elite status. Once you've reached an elite status, you'll get bonus perks, and these can be pretty insane. The ones that I find the most useful are definitely strength, endurance, and metabolism. Strength and endurance help with your stamina and carry capacity, and metabolism helps with your water and energy levels in raid. But there are so many more in the game, over 50 different skills in total. Not all of them are in the game just yet, but they're definitely working towards adding all of them. The weapon mastery system is pretty much what it sounds like. The more you use a certain type of weapon, the more you'll be able to control it. You get perks for recoil and things like that. What I'd like to see in the future somehow is maybe skins for the guns that you've mastered. I don't know if this is something that they're working on or if they're even interested in, but I'd like to see the weapon mastery system a little more fleshed out with rewards. So, kicking things off, we're going to talk about the traders first. There are currently 9 different traders in the game, but only 7 of them are the ones that you'll actually be using on a regular basis. The other 2 traders are either not super useful or late game and they give you really hard tasks. This is also kind of where tasking comes in. For every trader, you have a different set of tasks, and some of them range from finding things in raid, sending other players back to the lobby, eliminating AI, surviving, or simply just making you sit in a bush for 10 minutes while you dehydrate. Once you complete a task, you get a reward and some trader rep, which means that you're one step closer to leveling up your trader. But reputation isn't everything you need to level them up. You also need to spend money with the trader and be a certain level with your PMC before you can go to the next level with them. Once you start leveling them up though, you start to unlock a lot more. This ranges from better ammo, better guns, or even just better attachments. There is still pretty much everything in the game except for a couple of very hard to attain items. The flea market is a really cool system, and a lot of people have very different feelings about it. Some people say they want to remove it completely, but I love the flea market. They've done a lot of updates over the years, mainly to prevent cheaters from abusing it, but it feels like it's in a pretty good spot right now. Once you hit level 15 on your PMC, you're able to access the flea market. It's pretty much what you think it is. It's a market that people buy and sell things on, but the kicker is that the things you sell can only be found in raid. Anything that is not found in raid cannot be listed. There are a couple limitations that you can't list, like level 6 plates, high tier ammo, and thermal scopes, but for the most part, almost every single item actually can be listed. Don't fall for the pitfall that is buying parts off of the flea just to build a gun. Use of traders, the flea market is honestly a scam when it comes to attachments. The last thing I want to actually discuss in this section would be the maps. The maps are what you'll be doing your tasks on and working through the game in. There is no map button or HUDs, so you're stuck learning the map from scratch or looking them up on YouTube. Or the Tarkov wiki, that's usually what I do. There are currently 10 maps in the game, and they're all very wildly different with their own faction styles and respective bosses. Except for Labs. Labs does not have a boss yet, unless you consider cheaters to be bosses. This is going to be kind of subjective because everyone that I talk to has a completely different top 5 list of maps that they like. But currently my favorites are Woods Reserve and Streets of Tarkov. Mainly because I'm able to find PvP on those maps pretty quickly, and you find really big ticket items that are worth a lot of money in the game. I didn't really want to make this its own section, but I feel like I need to say something about the cheaters in this game because in all honesty it's just getting worse and worse. Cheaters to some degree have always been a problem from the very start in Escape from Tarkov, but they've been taking things to a whole new level recently, and there are clips floating around of people sending a cheater back to the lobby and then immediately being disconnected. This really isn't anything new. There's always been cheater Discord groups that have always targeted streamers, but they've never been able to DDoS that I know of, and I don't want to get too in depth with this really because I really don't know much about it, and I hate promoting cheaters in literally any way. But I felt like I needed to kind of bring it up and explain it a little bit because I didn't want people to purchase the game and literally just regret buying it. There's also a lot of closet cheaters in this game, and what I mean by closet cheaters is that they're intentionally hiding their cheats. Maybe they'll make a weird call out or their aim will be a little wild, but for the most part they're just trying not to get banned. Some people might also refer to this as soft cheating because they're not outright rage hacking and literally sending everyone back to the lobby. Regardless, it's pretty fucking annoying and pretty vomit inducing, but to each their own I guess. There really isn't anything you can do about them. All you can do is report them and kind of move on. But if you're the kind of person who stomps her feet and throws a temper tantrum over losing pixels, this might not be what you're looking for exactly. Because in all honesty, the good in Escape from Tarkov far exceeds the bad in this game. And I wish that more people could see that, instead of just complaining non-stop about the same thing over and over and over again. The late game in Escape from Tarkov is a little open-ended and strange, but a good kind of strange. It has a lot of things to keep you busy if you're one of those kinds of people. What do I mean by that exactly? Late game doesn't mean the same thing to every person that plays this game. It's very subjective. Some people just want to level up their traders to max and then PvP for the rest of the wipe. They don't really care about tasking or doing anything else other than getting into fights with other players. And then you have some players that want to attain the fabled Kappa container, which means you have to complete a certain amount of tasks and be a certain level before you can collect it. That's not even scratching the surface of what endgame means or has to offer the players in this game. There's so much more. PvP is the last thing I'd like to talk about here, and there's a lot to explore, but for the sake of your time, I'm going to try and keep it light. A lot of the PvP in this game is very position oriented, and it depends on if you enjoy playing solo or you're the kind of player that enjoys playing in groups. The game caters to team play and having good callouts, but if your team has bad communication, things can get really confusing and you can easily be systematically destroyed by one player. This is kind of an issue in every team game, but it feels like it hits a lot harder in Escape from Tarkov because you can lose your loot to a simple bad callout that someone makes on your team. Let me know down in the comments about your worst callout that you've had to deal with. There's also something called the inertia system, which provides your character with weight while moving around. It's a system that you don't really see in any other game at all besides Tarkov, and I think it provides a lot of balance to aggressive playstyles and literally gives more weight to it. Personally, I'm an aggressive kind of pusher in this game. I tend to jump around a lot and sling people on corners, but that's not really the most used playstyle in the game. A lot of people that play the game and watch the game would refer to it as chatting behavior, but honestly that feels more like a mental state than an actual playstyle. The other playstyle in the game is bush campers and angle holders. I'm not going to gatekeep and tell people how to play the game. If you get enjoyment out of playing the game like that, go for it. Keep doing it. I don't care. It's how you play the game. That's all that matters. But some people would refer to that kind of playstyle as ratting. But if you're a good player, you are definitely going to be mixing between the two. Some situations require you to rat, and some require you to swing the corner and just hope for the best outcome. The desync is also pretty awful in this game. It's definitely pretty noticeable when you know what you're looking for, but it's definitely nowhere near the same kind of desync that DayZ has. Now, what do I mean by desync? If you're behind a wall on your screen, you might not be behind a wall on the other player's screen. You might think that you have cover, but straight up, you're in the open. It's definitely been better this wipe, but I feel like it's always going to be a thing in the future for Escape from Tarkov. There's a ton more to talk about because the rabbit hole goes pretty far down, but that's for another time. I'll leave it to the other content creators who made videos specifically for that kind of thing. The bugs in this game are really tedious, and I feel like I already have PTSD from talking about them too much, so I don't want to go too in depth with them. But there are a pretty good amount. A few examples of bugs in this game are making you rebuild a weapon you just built, sending you back to the main screen because of moving bug errors, keeping you locked in a healing animation while in a raid, bugging your lobby so you can't even launch into one, and one of the most recent bugs that they fixed being the bug where you don't make any sound at all when you're crouch walking. I don't really have many gripes with the game itself. The game runs pretty smoothly for the most part, but it definitely has its moments, and I have a good computer, so maybe my opinion is a little out there. It's mostly just player behavior and how they play the game. The community can be pretty toxic sometimes, and just before I actually finished up this section, I had a player stream snipe us on the way to extract because his kit was expensive, giving his duo information that he otherwise wouldn't have had if he wasn't watching my stream. I understand that it's on me because I'm streaming to an audience, but there's a certain level of toxicity that comes with intentionally stream sniping someone because you can't handle losing a high tier kit in a game. It's simply just gross. Escape from Tarkov is always kind of a place in my heart. I've built a community around the game, and I've met friends that I otherwise wouldn't have met. It allowed me to connect with people from all over the world, and it's changed a lot of my perspective on things, and I've grown as a person from it. So to all of my friends who watched the video through to the end, thank you. You guys are unreal, and I wouldn't be here today without your help and support. I like the direction of the game. Even though there are some things that I don't agree with fully, a lot of the decisions that Battlestate Games have made are for the better overall health of the game. They're not intentionally profiting off of cheaters. They don't hate their game. They're not filthy rich and milking every single player. There's a game studio that made a really cool game. Hopefully this doesn't age like old milk, but I'm excited for the future. If you got anything out of this video, I hope that you'll take the time to subscribe, like, or even comment on the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
This one right here is some of that royalty free shit, some of that play that shit on stream shit. My name is Limbo City TV, and y'all thanks for tuning in.